Okay, hello. Welcome to day 3 of the Thrive Summit. Hard to believe we are here. It has been such an action-packed, actionable couple of days so far, and I know I've taken a ton of notes. I've already started shifting and refining some things in my business. I know you all have been working on how you're talking about your business, how you're connecting with people, and all of that is so exciting. And we know that to have a thriving business and to really um, do well as entrepreneurs, and I mean that in the biggest sense possible, like in our businesses, but also as human beings and loved ones, we need to take a holistic view of what it means to run a business. So I'm so excited that today, day 3, we've done all this expansion, and now we're getting to do some like really deep nourishment and tending. So, kicking off our wellness day, I have my very dear friend, Anne-Marie Cribbin here. She is the founder of Thirsty for Wonder. She is a sobriety coach, a spiritual companion, and through her work, she helps people live lives rooted in liberation, joy, and deep self trust. Her gorgeous signature program is called The Wellspring, a Celtic recovery journey. And there she weaves ancient wisdom and earth rhythms into modern healing. Anne Marie believes sobriety isn't about deprivation, it's a love story of rebellion, a return. And today she is here to talk to all of us about the importance of rest as entrepreneurs specifically because it's a non-negotiable, and it's one of those things that we often think we can just like put off, shove aside, and she is here to dispel that myth and show us the way. So take it away, Anne Marie.
Thanks, Olivia. Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here with you. Yeah, on this beautiful, beautiful morning. Actually, it's a little cloudy in Washington, D.C. today, but beautiful because we're all together. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Anne Marie. I use she, her pronouns. I am a sobriety coach, a writer, a spiritual companion. Yeah, all of those things that I love so, so much. And I am going to talk a little bit about sobriety today, weaving a little bit of the sobriety journey into rest as a business, as part of your business, as a part of a really radical business move, because the two do overlap. There are a lot of similarities there. So you'll hear a little bit about recovery and sobriety today too. And I just ask you to be open to that, even if sobriety is not your jam. It's totally okay. I'm not going to tell you to stop drinking in this presentation, but there are some things that overlap that are really important to hear. But first, I'd like us to just go ahead and do a little bit of grounding. I don't know about you, but even at 10 o'clock in the morning, my mind has already been going in 1,000 different directions, especially given the world political scene right now. Just even catching up on Instagram for Taylor Swift highlights, the news filters in, right? And so there's a lot going on, a lot going on in our lives and our businesses. And so let's just take a minute to just really ground ourselves. And so I invite you into a space of comfort, and whatever that looks like for you, where you are in your setup, at your desk, on your couch, wherever you are, just inviting yourself, your body into a space of deeper comfort. Intuitively, I always notice when I make this invitation is that my hands go right to my thighs and rubbing my thighs. This is a source of comfort for me. And so if there's something that your body wants to do intuitively, just go with that. If that's rocking back and forth or closing down your eyes or softening your gaze, just allowing yourself to enter into that space of deeper comfort. Maybe intentionally just dropping the shoulders and inviting some softness and ease into the body. And really just giving yourself permission to be here, to be fully present here. I know very, very well what it's like to be on a workshop and to be listening, and then to also casually answer some emails on the side. And so I just challenge you and invite you to be fully here today, fully present. Give yourself that gift of presence and connection to be held in this beautiful container that Olivia has created for us, and to be held in the space of collective care. And let's just take a couple of deep breaths here together. So breathe in through the nose if you're able to, fully engaging the diaphragm and the belly. And then a nice, long, slow, intentional exhale. A couple more breaths, breathing in and exhaling. One more, breathing in and exhaling. And then bringing your attention to your feet and the space around your feet, maybe feeling your feet planted on the floor, on the ground, on your ottoman, at the foot of your bed, wherever you are, just noticing your feet, the energy around your feet, and letting the feet be an anchor for us, rooting us here, steady, strong. And then as you're ready, just coming back to your space, opening your eyes, coming back to your screen if you want to. And thank you for taking that time just to kind of be here and allow yourself to show up, the radical permission of presence. Um, yeah, so I'm going to share, just to get us started, I'm going to share a tiny little bit of my story. What brought me to being a recovery coach, because when I was 5 years old, I did not want to be a recovery coach, right? I didn't want to be a sobriety coach when I was five. But something happened and here we are, right? And so that's something for me was alcohol became something in my life that was not serving me anymore. And I wanted to find a way to let that go. And I needed help with that decision. And so I found an online recovery community. I got sober online. I've been sober 7 years. But what happened for me in my alcohol journey was I went from, being exposed to alcohol at a very young age in an Irish Catholic family to letting alcohol be the story of community in my late teenage and college years. It was something that we did collectively together, right? Binge drinking culture, that sort of thing in college. In my 30s, 20s, and 30s, it became a status symbol of like, I had made it, right? Like, I could not only afford the ingredients for a Barefoot Contessa recipe, but I could have the wine pairing to go with it, right? And it was a social statement for me, a social status. It was a sense of belonging and accomplishment, that I could buy fancy wines and have drinks and go out for drinks and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was, I even became a certified wine specialist. I even went to sommelier school. I actually have a certification in French wines as a sober person. Yeah, you can laugh at that. It's totally okay. Yeah, but along the way, something shifted for me in my late 30s into my 40s. And what I found was is that alcohol was becoming slowly but surely a coping mechanism for a lot of different things, for stress, for loneliness, for anger, for grief, for loss, for joy, right? It was even hard to hold joy at that point in my life, to receive and hold joy, truthfully and honestly, felt like a burden. And so alcohol even became a relief for that. But what I was really finding was that I was trying to live a life where I was giving the best parts of myself away to everybody else, right? I was working in a job that I was great at, right? Like the outward, like the way that society or Lifetime movies kind of create the scene around alcohol dependence or alcohol use disorder. None of that was true for me. Like, no outward consequences happened in my life. I was great at my job and often got promoted or awarded or praised, right? I showed up to work on time. None of my relationships were falling apart because of my choices around alcohol. There were no real outward consequences, except for the internal shame that I was feeling, that I couldn't say no to this thing that I desperately wanted to say no to, because it was really serving the purpose of an exhale in my life. I was coming home after work every night, exhausted, burned out, living beyond the capacity that I had energy-wise. And alcohol was serving the place of real rest for me. And so it was giving me the illusion of rest, opening a bottle of wine every night, cooking dinner, drinking a couple of glasses of wine with dinner, drinking a couple of glasses of wine after dinner, leading up to bedtime was replacing rest. And it gave me the illusion of softening the edges, right? And it worked for a while until it didn't work anymore. And then I was becoming dependent on alcohol. What was habitual then became dependency. So 7 years, I was able to let that go after lots of starts and stops with that journey, after lots of sober Septembers and dry Januaries and whole 30s that were more like whole 22s, right? Like, truth be told, all of that kind of stuff. But I was finally able to let alcohol go completely. And what it did for me was it shifted so many things. It was the first time I let boundary work come into my sphere. I learned how to set boundaries, but it really radically shifted my relationship with rest. And this is a really, really bold claim, right? But I'm going to say this here, that rest has as much to do with recovery and sobriety as not drinking. Rest has as much to do with sobriety and recovery as not drinking. And I know that's a really bold claim, but I've worked with hundreds of people at this point in my coaching career and in recovery in the wellness space to say that that's true, right? And if that is true for something as big and life-changing and life-saving as recovery, then translate that to our businesses as entrepreneurs, right? Then let's put that in the context of our business and say, rest is as important as our mission statement. Rest is as important as our systems and operations. Rest is as important as our relationships with our clients, right? It has to be a priority in our business. It absolutely has to be. We will not have sustainable, thriving businesses if we do not develop a healthy relationship with rest, right? So there's that big scary thing out in the open. And the other big scary thing I'm going to say is when we're talking about rest, I am not talking about lavender baths and face masks on a Friday night. Those are wonderful and they serve a purpose. And believe me, one of my favorite things is to spend a shit ton of money on face masks and high quality skincare. Like, I love it, right? Cross addiction is real, and I gave up alcohol and I developed a habit for skincare, right? And so it's really okay. Those things have a beautiful place in our self-care, in our wellness, in our healing, all of those things. You will always see me on Amtrak headed to New York with a face mask on. Like, it's my favorite place to do self-care is on the train headed to New York, right? So those things have a really wonderful and necessary place in our lives and in the rhythms of our life. But what I'm talking about is deep, deep restorative care, rest, doing nothing, right? Taking a nap, laying down, social media detox, like deep forms of rest. Okay. That's what we're talking about here. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me and my story, and a little bit about how, yeah, social media detox. Yes, with the periods there, Olivia, absolutely, right? Social media detox. Do it. I was just chatting with Olivia before this. I've been off of social media, or I went off of social media in January. I was off for months and months and months. And then Taylor Swift went ahead and announced not only her new album release, but her engagement. And as a Swiftie, I had to get back on social media because I did not want to miss out on any of the fun. And here it is a month later, and I'm still scrolling, right? Like, it's just like the hook that grabs me, and I'm back in. And just this morning, I was like, that's it. I have to be done with social media again. Like, I can feel it creeping into my body. It's having an effect on my mood. Like, I notice it, right? And I have to let it go. So social media is a form of rest. Okay, so why are we talking about rest in business, right? Well, we just named it because it's essential. If we're going to have sustainable, thriving businesses, we have to develop a relationship with rest. And we know that entrepreneurs often run on hustle culture, right? Like, I cannot tell you how many times, especially from social media, I've been convinced that I'm running my business wrong, right? That all of my intuition is not really my intuition, and that I have to be making $15,000 a month, and I have to sign up for this program to be able to do it correctly. And I need to have a constant presence on social media to make that happen. I need to be, like lead magnets and all of the tech terms that I like make me cringe, right? All of the things that I know don't serve me well, but yet I buy into that because that is just the norm that we hear over and over and over again, is if you want this to be working, you've got to hustle to make it happen, right? We also know that rest is not a luxury, it's a strategy. And this is where we're talking about lavender bath bombs and things like that. There is a luxury to rest, to be able to take that time for ourselves is a luxury, but we're talking about rest as like, we're talking about rest as in life or death for our business, right? Like that's the radical statement that we're making. Like this is about the life and death of our business. And so we have to look at rest as not just a business move, but like a strategy, like an elite strategy for our business as well. And we know that rest unlocks clarity, creativity, and sustainable expansion. And we're going to talk about those a little bit more in length as we go on in the presentation. We can hit the next slide, Olivia. Olivia's running my slides for me today. Okay. So the truth about grind culture. So in order to really get behind rest as something that we can break, we really need to do the uncomfortable work of naming the origins of hustle culture, right? And this is where it gets sticky and uncomfortable, but it really needs to be said. Rest has been systemically denied to Black and Brown people and marginalized communities, and we can include women in those communities as marginalized, right? Grind culture is rooted in patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy, right? Included in grind culture is perfectionism. We can include perfectionism in there, right? A lot of people struggle with perfectionism, me included. People pleasing comes into that as well, is also rooted in those structures. And so we need to get really, really honest about that, because what I find working with people when we're talking about rest, and a lot of times, let me use this as an example. When somebody comes to me as a new client in recovery coaching, and we talk about their goal is sustainable long-term sobriety, they want to let go of alcohol and let go of alcohol for good. One of the things that we talk about first is what is an attainable goal? And a lot of times we're not talking about giving up alcohol right away. We're talking about the goal of, can you make your coffee and finish your coffee in the morning? Can you find 5 minutes for yourself in the morning? Right? Like we're talking about that kind of goal setting before we're talking about, and then I'm not drinking tonight. Okay. Like that's what we're talking about, because this stuff is so entrenched and conditioned into our being that it can take a lot of work to get to being able to name patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy. And so it's okay if there's some resistance to this. It's really, really okay if there's some resistance to this and hearing these things makes you a little bit uncomfortable. It's okay that that's a feeling that you have. This is unlearning a lifetime of conditioning to be able to embrace rest as a radical thing just for our lives and for our business. So I just want to kind of name that out loud. Patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, our good old, not good friends. Sorry, I'm trying to read the comments too. Let me catch up with the chat here. Grind culture is also in immigrant communities. Absolutely. Yes, totally, Leah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, beautiful. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide, Olivia. Okay, so a couple of books, and I have some book recommendations at the end of this, but I wanted to talk about one book that has really, really changed my life and really was the catalyst of really helping me unlearn hustle culture and grind culture and really understand how those structures, those systems of oppression were really dominant in my life, and that is the book Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto by Tricia Hersey. I recommend it for everybody. It is, whether you are in sobriety, like not like whatever, it should be mandatory reading for everyone across the board. I even have a couple of high schoolers, my godchildren are reading it right now as they enter into high school, and so they're already navigating just their high school lives, right? Like I have my goddaughter who's a freshman in high school. She's up at 4:45 in the morning to go to crew practice before school. She is in school from 8:30 to 3:30. After school, she has whatever club she's doing, or soccer practice, or debate, or whatever she's doing after school. And then she has hours of homework, right? And so her life at home has gone from the transition of summer, where she had her summer break, to just like being like, she told me the other day, I was like, how are things going? And she said, I am constantly exhausted and hungry. Like, that's her high school experience right now. I am constantly exhausted and hungry. And so we talked about this. We've been talking about rest and how to really adopt rest into her practices. And she is making the very brave decision to only do crew moving forward. She is letting go of her after school activities to prioritize her rest, which is really radical for a 14-year-old to do. But this is how critical it is, right, for all of us, that we start to unlearn these systems. So Tricia Hersey wrote this book, Rest is Resistance, and Manifesto. And it's rooted in these two concepts: that rest is a disruption to the systems of hustle and grind. It is a disruption to the systems of oppression. So when we feel that resistance of like, oh, I can't rest without feeling guilty, or I can only rest so I can be more productive. That's me, right? That for a long time, I was like, yes, I'll nap, but I will nap so I can get X, Y, and Z done later, right? So I will rest now so I can be more productive later in my day, or I'll rest now so I can like just barrel through this project and get it done in a weekend, right? I can stay up late and write the workshop or the presentation or whatever. And so having that resistance it's an opportunity for us to remember that it's these systems that want us to feel that way, right? So the resistance that we're feeling is the resistance to the systems that say it's not okay to rest. That it's not a moral failing to rest. It's actually inherently a part of our birthright and our existence as human beings, right? So this is a really groundbreaking book. And then the other thing that she talks about is rest is ancestral, radical, and liberating. So radical and liberating, I think, are two words that when we're starting out in this work, when we're novices and beginners in this work, radical and liberation can be concepts that are hard to get to. And again, that's okay. We're talking about a lifetime of conditioning that we're trying to unlearn. But can we get curious about what ancestral rest means? And this was a doorway for me. This is where the work became really, really attainable, was thinking about that. I am Irish, right? Like, my background is Celtic heritage, Irish heritage. Both sides of my family came here from Ireland. And so I started to get curious about that, because what we know from trauma, what I know from sobriety and recovery work, is that generational trauma is real. We know that. That's a fact, right? We know that generational trauma is real. And the question I started to ask myself, which felt like a brand new question, and it was for me at the time, was, well, if generational trauma is real, what about generational remembering? Is generational remembering real? And it is. And so I started to do that work myself of peeling away the layers of the systems in my lineage, right? And so what came before patriarchy? What came before colonization? What came before Christianity for me, right? In my culture, in my lineage of Celtic tradition? What came before all of those things? And what I came back to, and what is true for every culture, is a relationship with the land and the natural world. That's true for every culture, right? And so, when in doubt, going back to the relationship with the natural world, that is a really beautiful place to start, because we all have access to it by just looking out our window, right? And the natural world models for us a rhythm of rest. The entire harvest, we're in the season of the harvest right now, the first harvest in August, up to the autumnal equinox in a couple of weeks, like 2 weeks. Oh my gosh. We're in the season of harvest right now, and the whole entirety of the harvest is contingent on the work of winter, on the deep, deep work of dormancy, right? The whole harvest is contingent on the work of dormancy. And so the radical rest cycle of the earth is what allows us to be in this cycle of abundance. And if that is true for the earth, that is true for us, right? That is true for us. And so it's a really, really good place to start is when liberation and the idea of living a radical lifestyle may not be places that we can get to yet, right? Then going back to what is my ancestral connection to rest, and being really curious and investigating that for yourself in your own cultural and your own in your own family of origin. And let me catch up with the chat here, Leah. And epigenetics. Yes, absolutely. Right. Totally, totally, totally. I love it, Leah. So glad you're on board. Um, Lots of comments here. Amazing. All right. Let's keep going. Trying to be mindful of time too. Okay, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze. We're going to actually enter into a period of rest. And I'm just going to I'm going to read to you some quotes from Trisha Hersey from Rest is Resistance and Manifesto. So I invite you just into a place of softness in your body and just taking a deep breath if you want to or need to, and just allowing yourself to receive these words. And when I talk about receiving words, I don't just mean hearing them. I mean letting them kind of seep into your blood and bones and the marrow of your being, and just see what wants to rest and reside in your body, right? Like an embodiment of these words. What wants to live in your body when you hear these words? And so I'm going to read several quotes to you, and then we're going to move into another period of rest. But just go ahead and soften your gaze or close your eyes, whatever feels safest to you, or stare off into the distance, or even stare out a window if you have it handy. Maybe softening the shoulders and letting the belly soften. And just opening your heart and your ears and your minds. And just trusting that what needs to land will land, what needs to stay and take root will take root. Imagination is one of the most powerful modes of resistance that oppressed and exploited folks can do and use. Along with stealing your imagination and time, grind culture has stolen the ability for pleasure, hobbies, leisure, and experimentation. We are caught up in never-ending cycles of going and doing. Your body is a site of liberation. It doesn't belong to capitalism. Love your body, rest your body, move your body, hold your body. Treating each other and ourselves with care isn't a luxury, but an absolute necessity if we're going to thrive. Resting isn't an afterthought, but a basic part of being human. I refuse to push my body to the brink of exhaustion and destruction. Let the chips fall where they may. I trust myself more than capitalism. Our refusal will make space for abundance. And just holding that stillness just a moment longer, letting any of those words or ideas or even images just kind of take root in your being. We know that awareness is the catalyst for transformation. And so here we are in this beautiful place of awareness, knowing that we don't need to do anything else right now, that this is enough. Just hearing this is enough. And just allowing your body here to soften a little bit more. And when I invite people into rest, I always remind folks that rest for us can look like lots of different things. And one way that people imagine rest is curling up, right? Like getting cozy under a blanket and getting into the fetal position. And I also want to encourage you that rest can look like taking up space with your body. And this can be a safe and brave space to practice that. And so right now, with cameras off and eyes closed and nobody's gaze upon you, if you want to stretch your body out and practice that and see what it feels like, you are welcome to do that. And you don't need to clear your mind. You don't need to go to a blank space in your head. It's okay to just focus on my voice. We just want to bring softness and ease to the body right now as a form of rest, physical rest for the body that works so hard and does so many things that we don't even think about, like breathing and moving our blood around, the way that our organs take care of us, the way that our body brought us to this space this morning. And then just taking a deep breath here, breath of gratitude. And then just coming back to our space as you're ready. Thank you for doing that. Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to segue awkwardly and keep going. One more slide, Olivia. Okay. So rest in business, right? I was like, how do I do this? Do I like, I don't like, and now we've rested and now back to work, which seems like very counter to what we're talking about, right? But this is what we came for, is to talk about this. Like, how is this a part of our business model? Like, why is this important to business, right? And so rest in business, it brings us clarity. Think about this. Like, I was like, what kind of an example can I use for this? And this is what immediately came to mind. Have you ever been driving in your car and you're trying to follow directions or look for the house number or something, as you're driving down the street, and you turn the radio down so you can see? You turn the radio down so you can see better, right? So clarity comes when we step away from the noise. And that's not groundbreaking information. We know that to be true, but we also need the reminder consistently. Clarity comes, you did that this morning, Olivia. Clarity comes when we step away from the noise. More importantly, it clears the fog from constant urgency. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Taking a walk, suddenly we go for a walk, we remove ourselves from the noise of our office, of our situation, of the task that we're working on. We go for a walk and all of a sudden there's clarity and a solution, right? Like we're out of our headspace, we're in our bodies, we're practicing embodiment, somatic work is happening there. And all of a sudden there's a gateway, right? Something opens up to clarity. Rest also helps us distinguish between urgency and importance. And this is a really, really crucial distinction for business owners, right? For entrepreneurs. We default to urgency. We default to urgency when we are overwhelmed. That is the default mode of our brain, right? It gives us, again, kind of like alcohol gives us the illusion of rest. Urgency gives us the illusion of getting shit done. And so we default to urgency and we are firing off emails and we are putting out little fires and we get all of our Instagrams crap together, right? And we're doing all of the things that we're like, we have to get this done, we have to get this done. And we neglect what is important, which is relationship building with our clients, taking time to rest, taking time to make sure that we're still aligned with our original vision and mission of our businesses, right? And so urgency becomes the thing that we default to and importance gets pushed to the side. And so when we step away from the noise, and I'm talking about consistently, like this is also the thing that comes up when we're talking about rest. I have clients who are like, but you don't mean that I have to rest every day. Yes, yes, I do mean that you have to rest every day. But you don't mean that I have to rest for like a half an hour. Yes, yes, I do. I mean that you have to rest for a half an hour. Actually, if you could rest for an hour, that would be even better. If you have to micro rest during the day for 5 minutes at a time, that's okay too. But you absolutely need to prioritize rest every day and step away from the noise every single day, because this is a matter of life and death for our business. It's a matter of life and death it's also a matter of life and death for ourselves, quite frankly. So it helps us distinguish between urgency and importance. We're not going to have time to go through and spend a lot of time with the reflection prompts, but I wanted to put them there so you can go back and journal with them when you get the replay and the slides for this. But great questions to ask yourself here are, where are you pushing forward without enough perspective? Where are you pushing forward right now without enough perspective, right? A lot of times, this is where my money trauma comes in. And I start to make urgent choices around money and a lack mentality. And I start to put all of myself, I'm like, I have to do this thing. I have to fire off this workshop. I've got to get this done, right? And I'm on this trajectory of urgency. And I haven't taken the time to really pull back and say, actually, how does that make me feel then when I show up to that workshop? Well, I'm not resourced well enough to even be present to what I'm talking about because I'm just trying to make a buck, right? I'm not resourced well. It doesn't actually align with the vision of my business. I'm making decisions, right? And so I have to pull back on some things and say, where does this align? What does this mean to me? How am I going to show up for this? And so pulling myself back long enough to give myself that perspective, again, removing myself from the noise. What becomes clear when you slow down? Can you just notice that? Like pick a day in the next week and just play with that idea. Like notice yourself slowing down, be intentional about it. Eat a meal really slowly, right? Go for a walk and walk slowly and just pay attention to what happens. Like curiosity and awareness, those are the catalysts for transformation. Okay, next slide, Olivia. I know this is like so quick. We're going through all this. Okay. Rest in business for creativity. I will share with you, and I think this is true for a lot of people of my generation. I went to private school. I went to Catholic schools growing up, but I think this is true of a lot of our educational systems. For those of us, maybe if my generation, I'm 54, that the very first thing that was conditioned out of me was my creativity and my imagination. That was the very first thing in school. That was the very first thing that was conditioned out of me. That being a daydreamer was being lazy. Being a daydreamer meant that I was flighty, right? Being a daydreamer meant that I was emotional, right? And all of those things were seen as too much and not acceptable in the educational structures that I was in. And so a lot of my childhood was in authoritative, an authoritative structure between religion and between parenting. And so most of my childhood was, I didn't have any agency. I did what I was told, or there were consequences. And so there wasn't a lot of room for my imagination and my creativity to take place. And so that's still something that I'm reclaiming and recovering at 54 years old and 7 years into the recovery process, right? So I just want to name that this is, again, lifelong work, compassionate and tender work, right? So creativity blooms in stillness and not overdrive. We know that, again, this isn't anything earth-shattering or groundbreaking, but we do need the reminder that creativity blooms in stillness. So we have to give ourselves that space to just be still. We just practiced that for just 2 or 3 minutes. And I hope that that was enough time to even notice a little bit of shift in the body, just a little bit of shift. Like maybe it wasn't enough time for like ideas to come running into your head or anything like that, but it opened a door for that to happen. And so practicing stillness, one of my favorite forms of stillness during the pandemic in particular, because I was coaching during the pandemic, working for a company where, talk about burnout, I was seeing 27 clients a week during the pandemic for recovery coaching. And I was just like on the verge of burnout all the time. And one of my favorite things to do around stillness was I would lay on my bed for 15 minutes between clients and I would watch my ceiling fan rotate. That was it. That was my rest, right? And those 15 minutes saved my life. Saved my life. I did not get to burnout, thank God. I also quit that job as soon as I could, right? But I did not get to burnout because I allowed myself to rest, and enter into stillness. Yeah, we know that artists and writers and entrepreneurs often say best ideas come in the shower, while napping, or on vacation, right? When we're separated. I like to call this, and we also know we have science to back this up, right? That the time our brain is actually most active is when we're in what's called the default mode network, which is when we are daydreaming, which is when we are letting our minds wander, or is what I love to call my mind castle. I can hang out in my mind castle all day long. Reflection prompts here are: what creative ideas have come to you in rest? Just like honor your creativity. honor your creativity. How could you build micro rest into your creative process? Micro rest looks like I have a toolkit that I use for my recovery. If a craving comes up for alcohol, I have a physical toolkit on me at all times. It goes in my purse when I go out the door. I'm 7 years into recovery. I'm not going to drink, but shit triggers me, right? Like stuff still triggers me. And so I have micro rituals that I use. I've got Trader Joe's peanut butter cups in there. I've got some tea bags. I've got lotion to just rub on my hands. I've got lavender oil to breathe. I have things at my desk for between clients. I've got a bowl of Celtic sea salt that I dip my fingers into. And so just having micro rituals during your day or during your creative process is a really, really good way to like turn that dial down. And next slide, Olivia. I know we're coming up on time. Okay, expansion. Again, we're talking about rhythms, right? This goes back to the natural world. Expansion requires sustainable rhythms. Sustainable rhythms. We cannot be constantly in the space of output all the time. We just can't be, right? That is not sustainable for business. It's not sustainable for life. We have to have periods of rest. And the earth models that for us by giving us winter. We're already tipping into the dark half of the year. You know, like look outside tonight at 7:30. It's getting dark. Right? It's starting to get dark at 7:30 already. So we're already dipping into that like rest and reset and dormancy. There is energy around dormancy. Dormancy is not nothing happening, right? It is conservation. There's the energy of conservation that happens during dormancy. It's not nothingness. It's not laziness. There's actually beautiful things happening in that energetic field that allow for us to have seasons of expansion. It's also where integration happens, or what I like to call the Taylor Swift cardigan of recovery. When I use this in recovery terms, I'm like this is where we just like wear it, right? Where we just get comfortable in what we're doing and what we're learning and what we're receiving. And we just wear it and it's a really comfortable favorite thing, right? Expansion, rhythm, sustainability. Capacity. Rest equals capacity. Here's something I talk about in recovery a lot. When somebody comes to me and they say, my goal is to be sober, and I say, that is a beautiful goal. Tell me about your capacity to reach that expectation. And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? And I'm like, if your capacity is burnout and chaos and crisis, it is not a realistic expectation that you're going to be able to have sustainable sobriety right now, which is why often in recovery work and coaching, I do not coach people around sobriety in the first 3 months that we work together. Like not having a drink is usually not on the agenda of conversation for a long time because we really want to start to change the capacity that the person has to meet that expectation. And I use expectation instead of goal. I hate the word goal, right? And so we want to like, what is our capacity? And so we constantly have to be looking at that. Does my capacity meet my expectation? How do I need to adjust that? Usually we need to add more rest. Some reflection prompts here are, what are you trying to expand without enough capacity? Right? I'm constantly thinking about, I'm like, I need to grow my business. I need to have more clients. No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't actually have the capacity for that right now. I'm a 54-year-old woman in the throes of perimenopause and menopause who is just diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I do not have the capacity to grow my business beyond what it is right now. I just don't. And that's really okay. That's really okay. I have enough. It's enough, right? What would expansion look like if it included your well-being? What would expansion look like if it was rooted in your rest and your care first? So those are some questions there. Okay, last slide, please. Come rest and come hang out and come chat with me. I offer a napping call every Monday afternoon at 1 o'clock, and it's very intentional that Monday is the day in capitalist culture that we get it all done, that we hit the ground running and we're meeting our goals and all of those things. And so every Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern from 1 to 1:40, 40 minutes, I hold a napping call where we come into collective care and we nap. I say a lovely quote from Trisha Hersey. I do a little bit of getting everybody into a space of deep care. I play some Tibetan healing bowls. We rest for 40 minutes. I ring a little chime. You go back to your day. Is it awkward? Yeah. Yes, we're napping collectively over Zoom. You can keep your camera off. But we do it in the space of collective care because our healing is never for ourselves, right? Our healing is never for ourselves. It is always because it has a ripple effect into our families, our relationships, our communities, and the world. And the world needs it more than ever, right? So come hang out with me. I'll make sure Olivia has the link to share in the replay. It's also on my website. Feel free to book a virtual coffee with me. I love chatting with people. Ask me questions about recovery or sobriety. Ask me more about rest. Come tell me what's happening in your life. I love to hold space for people. People like what I write, and I encourage you to sign up for my weekly newsletter. It goes out on Wednesdays. People read it and give me great feedback. I love it. Like it feels like a miracle to me every time. Sometimes I talk about sobriety, very niche and in particular. Sometimes it's a broader conversation like this. And then on Wednesdays, I offer a support call, a recovery call on Wednesday nights. We're all in recovery from something, and so I encourage you to check that space out as well. And then the very last slide is just some book recommendations if you want to learn more about resting and do that deep inner work of changing the culture, right? Unlearning the culture. There's some book recommendations for you. Do we have time for questions or comments, Olivia? I know I went over a couple minutes. You're muted, Olivia.
I think that's the first time I've done that this session. So if people need to depart, by all means, do so. But if you have questions, Anne Marie and I are
Okay.
happy to stick
Yeah.
around and answer those. And as questions percolate, I would also love to hear, what is your top takeaway from this session? I know I got the slides a little wonky at some point because I had to pull up my notepad because there were some things I wanted to write down. I would love to hear what people are taking away from this and what your questions are for Anne Marie.
Yeah, or just comments, questions, whatever. Smart out commentary. I'm here for it all. Oh, Leah, I'm so glad. Yeah, healing is never just for ourselves, right? Healing is never just for ourselves. And like, it's such a powerful message for like the times we're living in right now. When I get really overwhelmed by the state of the world and I'm like, oh my God, like, what can I do? Like, what can I do? I always come back to like, I can invest in myself first. Like, yes, I have a responsibility to show up in the world as a good citizen, but that doesn't happen if I'm not taking care of my own healing and well-being first. Right. And it's like, it's that old shitty metaphor about, the oxygen mask, which I hate, right? Which is so cliche, but it's so very true. But it comes from that understanding that my healing is never just about me. It's never just about me. It absolutely has a ripple effect into our world. Thank you, Leah. I'm so glad that you were here. So glad that you were here. Anybody else want to use their voice or ask a question or put anything in the comments? Yeah, Olivia, energy around dormancy. Dormancy is not that it's like nothing is happening. Dormancy is so, so necessary for the life cycle, right? It's absolutely necessary for the life cycle.
Also, just one closing thought that I had written down, since we've also been talking this summit about like what it's like to be an intuitive business leader and what that looks like and how you tune into that. One thing I have found that knowledge that I resisted for a long time is that my intuitive gifts and my ability to access those are directly tied to reduced or eliminated alcohol consumption and caffeine, because for me, those really feed each other. So if I want to crave a glass of wine, I should just start with a cup of coffee in the morning. And rest. When I am rested and sober, my psychic gifts are in full force. And I think for a long time, I was afraid of those gifts. And so I was using alcohol unbeknownst to me to keep those really quiet, and work to keep those really quiet. So I think it can all just be braided together, knotted together. And when you start to peel them back, it's really interesting what can happen. Um, And I see Maria. Thank you. My somatic work is so related to this topic of rest. Yes, Maria, I do. I'm going to reach out because I want to hear more about your somatic work too.
Amazing. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, everyone. Take good care. We have 2 more wellness-themed sessions today. At noon, Halsey Peak is talking about the gut creativity connection. And then this afternoon at 2 Eastern Time, Tammy Schweber is helping us develop our somatics toolkits, which I'm really excited for. So I hope to see you there. Thank you all for joining now. And thank you so much, Anne Marie, for bringing all your beautiful insights to share with us.
Thank you. My pleasure. See you, everybody. Bye.